I think something is wrong. She's not responding to my texts. I'm worried. It was the voice of one of Brianna's friends in her voice. The tone was panicked, as if her intuition was screaming that something was terribly wrong. A few blocks away, a security camera at a high-end furniture store recorded a man entering, quietly, slowly, and disappearing behind the display counter. 40 minutes later, he reappeared, leaving through the back door, nothing out of the ordinary except for one thing. He was wearing a mask, a hood, and an oddly cold blankness in his eyes. Brianna Kupfer, 24, a graduate student at UCLA, was smart, sweet, and loved interior design. On weekends, she often worked at Croft House in Hancock Park, where she was trusted to work a solo shift. The person who entered the store that day was Sean Laval Smith, a 34-year-old man with a troubled past and complicated behavior. He did not know Brianna. He had no reason to visit Croft House, except that Brianna sensed as soon as she saw him, something was off. It was January 13th, 2022, and Los Angeles was rainless. The soft light of a winter afternoon bathed the quiet neighborhood. But inside the glass doors of a furniture store, something unusual was quietly taking place. Something that would shake the entire city just hours later. Around 1:36 p.m., a tall, slouching man walked into Croft House, a furniture store on La Brea Avenue in the heart of the elegant Hancock Park neighborhood. There was no greeting, no eye contact. He scanned the display cases as if searching for something. The only employee in the store was Brianna Kupfer, the only employee on duty. Just minutes after the stranger appeared, Brianna sent a text message to her friend. "Someone just walked in, doesn't feel right." That short message now became the only warning sign of the tragedy that was about to unfold. No one witnessed what happened inside, but the camera and audio recordings captured the entire fateful moment. Smith approached Brianna, without haste, without fuss. During the brief period that followed, there seemed to be a conversation between the two. Her voice came through the tape recorder. "Can I help you?" Soft, polite. But instead of a response, there was a chilling scream. "It's over, bitch!" In less than a minute, he pulled out a long knife and stabbed her repeatedly with a brutality beyond imagination. A total of 46 stab wounds, 26 penetrating, and 20 other cuts, were later identified in the autopsy report. He did not leave the scene in a hurry. Smith walked to the back of the store, opened the back door, and escaped into the alley. No one on the street noticed anything unusual. He continued to a nearby 7-Eleven, bought a bottle of water, and then blended in with the crowd. Inside Croft House, Brianna lay motionless behind the counter. No one knew until the next customer walked in about 20 minutes later and discovered the body. The customer immediately called the police. At this point, investigators began to review cameras from the store and surrounding areas. They realized that Smith was a stranger with no appointment or connection to the company. DNA data collected from the bent knife at the scene quickly matched the profile of Sean Laval Smith, a vagrant who had been arrested more than 10 times in many different states. Although there were no eyewitnesses to the murder, all the clues from fingerprints, cameras, voices to footprints pointed in the same direction. And from that moment, Los Angeles entered a tense manhunt to bring the perpetrator to light. Around 2 p.m. on January 13, 2022, a customer visited Croft House with the intention of viewing the kitchen cabinets. He pushed the door open and entered. The familiar jingle bell rang. Inside, no one came out to greet him. There was no greeting, no footsteps in response. The entire luxurious space was immersed in an unusual silence, stuffy and suspicious. The customer glanced around. The checkout counter at the back of the store showed signs of disturbance. A figure lay motionless behind the counter, long brown hair hanging down across the white wooden floor. He approached, then recoiled in horror. The woman's body was unconscious. Her light-colored shirt was stained with blood. In that moment, all feelings seemed to freeze. His hand shook as he dialed the emergency number. 911. I think someone's hurt. She's not moving, and there's blood everywhere. His voice was strained, but clear enough for the operator to register the emergency. Less than 5 minutes later, 2 LAPD patrol cars arrived. The police approached the store with their weapons ready. A paramedic accompanying the first responders confirmed. The victim had been dead for some time. All signs pointed to no accident. The police quickly cordoned off the area, erecting barricades around the building. Inside, the scene was frozen. Every trace of blood, every scattered object, all of which became clues. The victim's body was found lying on the floor behind the counter, her arms covering her chest in a defensive position. A last desperate reflex. Her personal phone was still open with the messaging app, having not yet sent another message. There was no sign of a burglary, the safe was not broken into, and the property was still intact. The silence of the store made the scene even more eerie, as if the crime had taken place in a separate world, silent and unknown. The victim was quickly identified as Brianna Kupfer. Police immediately reviewed all data from security cameras. Just a few hours later, the image of the suspect was extracted. A tall, black man leaving the store through the back door. From that moment on, the incident was no longer a single murder. It was the signal for a large-scale investigation, to find the identity of the perpetrator, to return justice to a girl whose life had been robbed in broad daylight, right in her workplace. Inside Croft House, the forensic team began their meticulous work. Every object, every bloodstain, every fiber was carefully collected like the last piece of a gruesome puzzle. In the area behind the counter where Brianna's body was found, there was no sign of a prolonged struggle. Everything had happened quickly, extremely quickly and unexpectedly. On the floor, a long knife with an unusually curved blade lay less than a meter from the body. The handle still bore sweat and fingerprints. This was the murder weapon, and the first piece of evidence that opened up a specific line of investigation. The results of the forensic examination showed that Brianna had died from acute blood loss. Her body had suffered a total of 46 injuries, 26 deep stab wounds to vital areas and 20 secondary cuts. Most of them concentrated around the chest, neck, and abdomen. The injuries indicated that the killer had acted with great force, in a decisive manner, rather than killing in a state of immediate excitement. The time of death was determined to be just minutes after Brianna sent her last text message. There was no evidence of sexual violence, nor any signs of robbery. Wallet, phone, rings were all intact. What caught the attention of the investigators was, the killer had not tried to hide the scene. He left everything behind: fingerprints, DNA, even the words heard on the recording device. That recklessness revealed a dangerous portrait. A killer not out of vengeance, but simply because he wanted to kill. And he was out there, free, in the middle of a noisy city, as if nothing had happened. Immediately after Brianna's body was discovered, Los Angeles police began analyzing security camera footage. The image of a tall man wearing a mask and hood leaving the store through the back door attracted attention. There were no appointments recorded at that time. This person became the prime suspect. The knife at the scene was sent for examination. Sweat stains and DNA samples left behind matched the profile of a person who had been arrested multiple times in different states. Sean Laval Smith, 34. Police issued a statewide wanted notice and called on the public to provide information. The reward was up to $250,000. 5 days later, on the morning of January 19, a Pasadena resident spotted a man resembling the suspect sitting at a bus stop. He called 911 and gave a detailed description of his appearance. Police approached the man silently, closed in, and arrested him on the spot. No resistance, no explanation. In the interrogation room, Smith kept changing his story. Initially, he denied ever having been to Croft House, then said he had passed by. When confronted with the camera and GPS data from his phone, Smith began to avoid questions, sometimes remaining silent for dozens of minutes. The prosecutor presented the forensic results: 46 wounds on Brianna's body, most of which pierced her heart, lungs, and neck. This showed that this was not a spontaneous act, but a deliberate attack. When the investigator presented the recording from the scene, with Brianna's voice soft and then the suspect's angry screams, Smith bowed his head, showing his instability for the first time. In parallel with the interrogation, the digital team extracted nearby cameras, location data, and card usage times at 7-Eleven. All matched the time of the murder. Smith's phone also recorded the exact route, arriving at the store at 1:35 p.m., leaving at nearly 2 p.m., a time that matched Brianna's last text message. Psychologists were called in to assess the defendant's mental state. They concluded Smith did not have a serious mental illness, was fully aware of his actions, understood the consequences, and was in control. The attorney's attempt at an insanity defense was dismissed. The entire investigative file was completed within a few months, including autopsy results, body camera copies, audio recordings, DNA reports, and witness statements. All the details pointed to the same conclusion. Sean Laval Smith was the one who killed Brianna Kupfer, without reason, without warning, without personal conflict. In September 2024, Smith went to trial charged with aggravated first-degree murder. The prosecution's case was described as airtight and impenetrable, based on forensic and psychological evidence. Ultimately, the verdict was handed down, but what was left behind was just the tip of the iceberg: immeasurable loss. Courtroom 307, Los Angeles Superior Court, was packed on the morning of September 10, 2024. More than 2 years after the shocking case, the public and the media were still closely following every development of the trial of Sean Laval Smith, the man charged with first-degree murder with aggravating circumstances. The eyes of the victim's family, friends, and strangers present were all directed towards the defendant, a 34-year-old man wearing an orange prison uniform. His figure was quiet, but his eyes could not hide the coldness. The prosecutor opened with the image of Brianna, a girl with a bright future whose life was taken away right at her workplace in broad daylight. On the large projection screen, images extracted from cameras, injury assessment tables, GPS maps. Each piece of evidence was presented one by one, as if piecing together each beat of a pre-planned murder. The detail that silenced the room was the recording from the store's internal recording device. Brianna's voice rang out softly, "How can I help you?" And just seconds later, Smith's fierce scream, "It's over, bitch!" It was undeniable evidence of the defendant's intentional behavior and the defendant's hatred for the victim. The defense attorney tried to argue about his unstable mental state, that Smith had a medical history, lived on the streets, and had no control over his actions. But the medical examiner affirmed the defendant was fully competent to bear criminal responsibility. He knew exactly what he was doing and showed no signs of losing his cognitive capacity during the crime. After 5 days of deliberation, it didn't take long for the jury to reach a unanimous opinion. The result was announced in a suffocating silence: guilty of first-degree murder, premeditated. On October 2nd, the court officially announced the sentence: life without parole, plus an additional year for use of a deadly weapon. Smith did not react. He just bowed his head, clenched his fists, and said nothing. Brianna's family walked out of the courtroom, neither happy nor angry. "No sentence will bring my daughter back," the father said slowly. "But justice, at least, has been spoken." Brianna's story spread across the United States. Hundreds of thousands of people shared her image on social media with the words, "Remember her name." The case was not just a criminal conviction, but a wake-up call about workplace safety and the need for justice for innocent people who had no chance to defend themselves. Brianna Kupfer's death not only took a young life, but also left an unfillable void in the hearts of her family, friends, and community. Her smile, which once lit up the Croft House store, is now only present in memorial photos and tributes. Every time the father mentions his daughter, he doesn't cry. He just chokes up, as if the pain has frozen too long to shed tears. This case is not an uncommon story, but it is a profound warning. In a modern city, in broad daylight, in what seems to be the safest place, tragedy can still strike. It is a reminder of vigilance, of the importance of establishing protective procedures for workers, especially women in the independent work environment. The court can sentence a person, but society needs to judge a reality. Why can a dangerous person roam around the city without anyone controlling? Why does a girl have to work alone without any support measures? Justice has spoken, but have we learned enough not to repeat it? A moment of carelessness and unguarded action can cost a life. And the final question for each audience is, if you were the person who walked into the store that day, would you have been quick enough to realize the danger approaching?